So, 김종덕교수, he's given me the task of looking at the field of new media art as it relates to augmented reality technology. That's what I'm going to talk about today.
오늘 김종덕 교수님께서 저에게 어그멘티드 리얼리티와 뉴 미디어 아트의 관련성을 얘기해달라고 해서 이 자리에 왔습니다.
Quick introduction to myself. My name is James Powderly, but some of my students call me Karu.
제 이름을 짧게 소개하자면 제 이름은 제임스 파우더리, 한국말로 라스네임 파우더가 가루라서 사람들이 가루 교수라고 부릅니다.
I teach here at Hongdae in the Department of Visual Communication Design, 시각디자인.
저는 홍익대학교 시각디자인과 교수입니다.
네, 학생이요. I haven't always worked in Seoul. For a while, a few years ago, I worked here on the planet Mars.
저는 항상 서울에서 일한 것만은 아니고요. 그 전에 오랫동안 화성에 대한 일을 했습니다.
Not me personally, but the robots that I helped. I was a part of the team making the Phoenix Lander, the Mars Exploration Rover, and in particular, I spent 5 years of my life working on this project, the rocket abrasion tool.
나사에서 화성에 필요한 피닉스 착륙선, 화성 탐험 자동차, 과일을 마모시키는 툴, 이런 발명품의 일부를 개발했습니다.
But I eventually retired from aerospace engineering and decided to go back to my roots, which were in art and design practice. And I received a residency at the I-Beam Open Lab, which is somewhere between the MIT Media Lab and a traditional art residency, with the one exception that all the work here was open source. So we developed open source creative technologies.
우주 산업 분야에서 일한 후 다시 디자인 분야로 돌아가길 원했습니다. 그래서 I-Beam이라는 오픈 랩에 어플라이를 했고 거기에서는 예술가 레지던시 프로그램과 MIT 미디어 랩의 중간 정도의 성격을 띈 실험실인데요. 우리가 하는 일의 가장 큰 특징은 그 장소에서 만들어지는 모든 기술을 오픈 소스로 무상으로 배포하는 개방형 작업입니다.
It was there that I met a man named Evan Roth, and we began working on a project where we researched graffiti, called Graffiti Research Lab.
제 동역자 에빈 로스와 함께 저는 GRL이라고 그래피티 리서치 랩을 설립했는데요.
The purpose was to combine traditional tools of graffiti with new digital technologies that would enable sort of impossible things, previously impossible things.
그래피티 아티스트를 위한 크리에이티브 툴을 개발하는 랩인데요. 기존의 전통적인 그래피티 플러스 디지털 테크놀로지, 광고, 인터랙티브 아트들을 융합하여 만들어내는 작업입니다.
So we made a number of projects which combined electronics and traditional graffiti elements, paint, stencils, spray paint, markers.
스프레이 페인트, 마커스, 스텐슬 같은 전통적인 방법과 디지털 테크놀로지를 이용한 작업들을 보여드리겠습니다.
And we used a number of do-it-yourself technologies that were formerly only available to advertisers. We tried to put them in the hands of individuals, activists, and creative artists.
우리는 손수 제작하는 그런 테크놀로지 등으로 사람들이 프로젝터를 이용해서 이 광고성 작업을 할 수 있는 그런 작업을 도와드립니다.
So these days I've been working on a project with a group of my friends called the iWriter, which was a project where we attempted to work with a paralyzed graffiti artist named Tim Kwan to give him a tool that would enable him to again create artwork using the one thing he has left, which is his eyes.
요새 최근에 iWriter이라는 프로젝트에 참가하고 있는데요. 이것은 안구 인식 그래픽 프로그램으로 템프콘이라고 LA의 되게 유명한 그래피티 아티스트가 루게릭 병에 걸려서 근육이 축소되어서 아무것도 못하고 그냥 정신은 살아있거든요. 그래서 그 사람의 눈동자를 인식해서 컴퓨터로 글씨를 쓰거나 그림을 그리는 기기를 개발하고 있습니다.
This is Tony, Temp1, and this is some of the work that he's made using his iWriter device.
토니 템컨의 얼굴이었고요. 요새 그 iWriter이라는 그 가정의 그 프로젝트 기기로 만들어내는 폰트 또 이 그래피티 이런 것들을 보여드리고 있습니다.
He's now able to control a robotic arm that responds to commands of design movements.
저 로보틱 arm이 그 톰 컨의 팔의 무브먼트를 인지하여 그 작업들을 하고 있습니다.
So my first experience with augmented reality was graffiti. The way graffiti artists augment the reality of the streets.
처음에 제가 Augmented Reality에 expose 된 것은 아날로그 Augmented Reality로 이렇게 타일을 이용한 그 모자이크 그 형태를 보고 Augmented Reality를 보게 됐습니다.
So probably the experience of augmented reality you're most familiar with is an individual holding up a piece of paper in their dorm room in front of a webcam and some bad 3D geometry sort of shows up on this page.
여러분들이 이해하시는 Augmented Reality는 그 전형적인 종이를 웹카메라에 대가지고 그 XY 축에 그 3D 형상이 올라오는 이런 걸 생각하실 겁니다.
This type of technology relies, as you know, on AR markers, which are the lingua franca of AR these days.
AR marker, 그 AR 하면은 항상 생각하는 게 이 AR marker를 생각하시죠?
One of the first mentions I've seen of augmented reality is here. Augmented, diminished, or otherwise altered visual perception of rigid planar patches in real-world scenes. This is the thesis of Steve Mann, one of the earliest technologists using wearable computing and reality-mediating devices.
스티브 맨이라고 이쪽 wearable 컴퓨터, 착용식 컴퓨터의 창시자라고 할 수 있는 교수가 한 얘기인데요. 현실 세계에서 단단한 평면의 증강된, 약화된 또는 대체된 시각적 지각.
Steve Mann, scientist, inventor, MIT researcher, also sort of a trickster at heart. Some of his early experiments with augmented reality.
스티브 맨의 초기 작업인데요. 그 평면에 Augmented Reality 작업을 한 것입니다.
But before I begin, I just want to start with a warning from Julian Oliver, who's one of the main practitioners of augmented reality new media art. And he said, don't mistake the tool for the purpose. The tool being augmented reality markers, computer vision, GPS, and the purpose being to create a new visual or oral or information experience that combines reality with some mediating technology.
더 얘기하기 전에 주의, 워닝을 하나 주고 싶은데요. 줄리안 올리버라는 사람이 한 얘기인데 Don't mistake the tool for the purpose. 목적을 위한 툴을 잘못 판단하지 말아라 라는 것을 꼭 염두에 주시기 바랍니다.
So somehow this practice of augmented reality, diminished reality, it all hinges on some special relationship with reality itself.
Reality, words to be never 이렇게 헤드셋을 끼고 리얼리티를 쳐다보면서 하는 저런 리얼리티가 아주 마음에 들지 않는
No, it's just that whether it's diminished reality or augmented reality or somehow mediated reality, the important part is not the AR marker, but in this relationship between the input and the output, which on both ends is reality itself.
중요한 것은 그게 diminished 됐던, augmented 됐던 그게 꼭 AR 마커에 국한되지 말고 그 현실을 인풋하고 아웃풋해서 뭔가를 만들어내는 것입니다.
So whether the input, which is real, is GPS or computer vision analysis of the world or even just human perception, it is an input into some mediating technology, whether that's a computer or a mobile device or even an analog information display like a map. And the output is a composite experience, visual, oral, information, sensory or otherwise, composite of reality and this mediating technology, however it operates.
처음에 현실 세계에는 GPS, 컴퓨터 비전, 휴먼 퍼셉션 같은 그 요소들이 인풋이 되어 미디에이팅 테크놀로지에 개입하는 그 기술이 개입돼서 다시 아웃풋으로 되는 그 현실은 그 레이어들이 컴파지되고 모든 그 기술과 현실이 융합된 그런 아웃풋이 나오게 됩니다.
So I think this includes three types of practices: augmented reality, diminished reality, and a word I just made up, magically mediated reality.
세 가지 캐리고리를 얘기할 수 있는데요. 증강된 현실, 약화된 현실, 또 마술이 개입된 현실.
Let's look at some examples here. This is a project by Julian Oliver, the young man I quoted earlier, New Zealand-based artist living in Berlin, or New Zealand-born artist based in Berlin, called Levelhead.
줄리안 올리버라고 아까도 얘기했듯이 뉴질랜드에서 태어난 아티스트의 작품 레벨헤드를 보여드립니다.
So this is a type of tangible interface into a 3D gaming environment.
만질 수 있는 큐브를 사용해서 3D 환경을 보여드리고 있습니다.
It uses all of the kind of classic examples of AR technology, markers, computer vision.
전형적인 AR 마커가 컴퓨터 비전을 통해서 작업을 했습니다.
Another, perhaps more poetic example is this Les Monts des Montons. I don't know how to pronounce it. By Camille Scher, who produced this as a grad student. I always mention this to my grad students because we should be making this type of work. So she invisibly uses augmented reality markers, using the photographs from the book itself as the tag, and then very subtly augments them with computer graphics, motion graphics, to sort of subtly change the story.
산의 세계라는 제목을 가지고 있는 까밀 학생의 작품인데요. 그 아주 미묘하게 증강현실을 사용해서 그 감성을 풍부하게 만드는 그런 작업의 얘기입니다.
So unlike a lot of augmented reality work, this doesn't use the augmented reality marker itself as a kind of a placeholder to substitute with 3D graphics. But the augmented reality marker is augmented by the graphic and works in the story as well. So the book functions as a book. And the graphics add sort of an additional impossible layer of motion and depth.
기존의 AR 마커를 사용한 게 아니라 그 그래픽의 그 컴퓨터 비전 그 프로그래밍을 이용해서 그 그래픽을 더 강화시킨 그런 예라고 할 수 있습니다.
So British artist collective Cassette Playa, here using traditional tools of augmented reality to create a kind of a virtual fashion show.
카셋 플레이어라는 브리티시 아트 컬렉터의 작품인데요. 패션쇼에서 어그멘티드 리얼리티를 이용한 예입니다.
So the next project is done by two artists, Aaron Myers and Jeff Krause, both artists working at I-Beam Art and Technology Center. And they've created a type of competitive game that uses AR marker tags. So two competitors collect 5 YouTube videos that they think are the best YouTube videos out there. Funniest, silliest, most interesting. And those are associated with AR cards, and sort of like the game of war, where you take a random card and lay it down, highest card wins. They put these AR markers in front of a camera, and it's replaced with the YouTube video that's associated with the tag. And then audience members vote with a laser to say which video is the best video.
아이빔의 에런과 제프가 그 컴퓨터티브 게임을 어그멘티드 리얼리티 그 태그를 이용해서 만든 건데요. 어디언스들 5개씩 유튜브에서 가장 좋아하는 음악을 내놓고 그것들을 관중이 뭘 더 좋아하는지 레이저 태그로 보트하는 그런 게임입니다.
So two interesting parts of this project. One is that using AR as a means to create a more social aspect to what's normally a very solitary practice of watching a funny YouTube video while you should be doing work. The other is that they're using tools now that make augmented reality art available to us all. So AR Toolkit is a library, a software library that makes augmented reality much, much easier. And then they're using open frameworks and processing, programming languages which are designed for designers, not computer scientists, for designers to be able to quickly learn how to make interaction, include interaction in their projects.
여기서 중요하게 봐야 될 점은 그 Augmented Reality 프로젝트를 이용하는 데 있어서 그냥 개인적인 작업에서 끝나는 게 아닌 사회적인 관점에서 어디언스들과 인터랙션 할 수 있다는 게 중요한 겁니다.
The next project is one of a number of projects which use augmented reality as an interventionist tool, as a tool to stick something into spaces that normally you wouldn't be able to access in the physical world, but in the virtual world, you can become a participant. In this case, they're in the MoMA, and a group of artists have placed their work inside the Museum of Modern Art, alongside, and in some cases over the top of the work of the great masters of art history.
모마에서 전시된 Augmented Reality 익스비션인데요. 벽에는 아무것도 걸려져 있지 않고 그 디바이스를 통해서 이 Augmented Reality 작품들을 감상할 수 있는 전시입니다.
So augmented reality is used to create an impossible virtual space.
현실 불가능한 그 가상 세계에서의 이 스토리가 담겨 있죠.
There's a number of pieces like this that are virtual critiques of public or private space. This example, obviously, a sort of historical representation of the tank man standing in front of the tanks in Tiananmen Square, physically not present or historically remembered in the public space, but virtually sort of a collective consciousness can be displayed.
AR을 이용해서 가상적인 비판을 할 수 있는데요. 이런 역사적인 재현을 통해 탱크가 원래 그 어느 시대에 있었다는 것을 재현할 수 있습니다.
This piece, another work that's a virtual critique of public space by Julian Oliver. It's called the Art-vertiser, instead of advertiser, Art-vertiser. And it is a physical device which combines computer vision and GPS technology. Looks like a pair of binoculars. You look through these binoculars at a public space, and the billboards are replaced by a curated art exhibition.
줄리안 올리버의 작품으로 Art-vertiser라고 예술과 광고의 합성으로서 이 피지컬 이퀴먼을 GPS와 이 컴퓨터로 만환경처럼 보면서 이 상업 빌딩의 광고를 AR을 이용한 기술로 만들어 놓은 것입니다.
So this would be classically thought of as a diminished reality piece, but he calls it an improved reality. Because on a computer, every file has permissions, read and write. You can read a file, or you can write to a file. And he says that public space, especially billboards, are kind of a read-only medium, so one-way communication. And with the Art-vertiser, you make it a two-way dialogue, because now you can write to these spaces.
이 기술을 통해서 기존의 광고에서는 one-way로 그냥 read-only 했었을 수 있었던 것을 two-way로 인터랙티브 할 수 있게 만든 광고입니다.
Again, this creates impossible public spaces.
현실적으로 저런 광고를 할 수는 없지만 Augmented Reality니까 할 수 있겠죠.
So the next example is a completely analog augmented reality experience created by two artists, Israeli artist Mushan Zer Aviv and Palestinian artist Leila El Haddad. And
두 학생의 작품을 합친 건데요. 그 전형적인 아날로그 어그멘티드 리얼리티 프로젝트로서 이스라엘 텔아비브의 지도와 팔레스타인의 가자 지구 지도입니다.
So you take one map and print it on one side of paper, turn it over, put it back in the printer, and you print the other map. When you hold it up to the sunlight, you can see both maps superimposed. And then as you walk around Tel Aviv, you can have a virtual experience of what it's like to live as a Palestinian in Palestine, where you meet all the checkpoints, the restricted areas, places you can't pass through and whatnot.
한쪽에는 텔아비브 이스라엘의 지도를 프린트아웃하고 다른 한면에는 가자 지구 맵을 프린트해서 그거를 햇빛에 이렇게 비추어 보면요, 실제로 가자에는 지금 갈 수 없는 그 길을 텔아비브 지도로 가상으로 가볼 수 있는 그런 지도를 만든 것입니다.
The next piece is by South Korean artist Lumpens. Are you ready? Lumpens, I think here has created a type of critique of augmented reality. In this humble dorm room setting, a single student transforms himself using augmented reality into the most powerful transformer in the world, Optimus Prime.
코리안 작가 럼펜의 작품인데요. 약간 비판적으로 그리고 지금 환경은 굉장히 험블한 백그라운드에서 아주 파워풀한 그 트랜스포머가 가능하다는 그런 가상현실을 얘기하고 있는 건데요.
So, to be honest, I don't know if Lumpens intends this to be a critique of augmented reality. I think it functions in that way because it's complete with all the shaky 3D geometry and the kind of awkwardness of these AR markers.
럼펜이 이거를 정말 의도했는지는 모르겠지만 제 생각에는 그 어떤 비판적으로 이 트랜스포머가 반대의 그 환경과 그것들을 모순에 관한 이야기를 하고 있는 것 같습니다.
So the next example, I think, is a very good interface design that uses augmented reality technology quite invisibly. It's called Reactable, and it's by a group of researchers at Institut Pompeu Fabra in Spain.
아주 유명한 리액터블이라는 작업인데요. 스페인의 팜페우 대학의 뮤직 테크놀로지 그룹이 개발한 전자악기입니다.
So it's an instrument that combines a projector and AR marker technology, computer vision, in order to kind of display what we don't see anymore in electronic music, how all the elements combine together to make a piece of music. Each block contains an instrument, so the bass drum has just been added. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, there's the vocal, the Rihanna vocal, and it's connected to another block, which is echo, 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 echo. So you see visually how all these elements combine together, something we don't get anymore in a lot of electronic music.
테이블 위에 만질 수 있는 부각들을 놓고 그것들이 이제 상호작용을 함으로써 가상의 모듈러 합성 장치가 움직여서 음악을 만들어내는 원리인데요. 맨 왼쪽에 보컬 리아나의 음악이 나오고 기타 소리가 나오고 에코가 있고 그것들을 어떻게 놈으로 인해서 또 다른 음악이 창조되는 그런 형태입니다.
So this is both a performance tool for a single individual or team, and also a kind of a communal experience. Many blocks are on the table, many hands can participate at the same time. So this next project is another example of an audio augmented reality experience by Theo Watson. And this device doesn't use AR tag technology, but it uses computer vision to scan a 3D room. And an individual can walk around in this space, and they can place audio samples using the microphone. Those samples will be placed in physical space. And then other users can walk through and re-experience those sounds as they were made with binaural audio. So you hear them in the right ear, they're coming from the right direction. And that person can add to the conversation. Another third person can come and hear a conversation that occurred between two people, but temporally out of place. And they can also add new elements.
티오 왓슨의 오디오 AR 작품인데요. 컴퓨터 비전을 통해 저 공간에서 첫 번째 실험자가 들어갔을 때 오디오에서 들리는 소리를 듣고 말을 하면 두 번째 들어간 또 참여자가 첫 번째 사람의 음성도 들리고 벽에서도 어떤 소리가 들리면 그것이 또 컴바인 돼서 세 번째 사용자가 들어갔을 때 그 첫 번째 거, 두 번째 거의 소리가 합성으로 들리면서 또 자기가 어떤 용어를 내뱉음으로써 계속 크리에이트 해가는 그런 작품입니다.
The audio experience of being in the room.
Going to die, 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 anytime, anytime,
Janet Cardiff also has created a piece which uses simple digital technologies, no traditional analog, no traditional AR technology to create a kind of virtual experience that's acted out in public space. So participants go on a walking tour and they have headphones and a video camera. She tells them where to point the camera and they see a scene, in this case inside PS1 Museum of Art in Queens, New York. But the wall that they're pointing their camera at is now different. Characters are acting out scenes from a narrative. In this case, it's a story of a murder which occurs inside the museum.
뉴욕 퀸즈에 있는 PS1 뮤지엄에서 하고 있는 해본 작품인데요. 자넷 커디브의 작품으로 아주 간단한 그 카메라 캠코더 컴퓨터 비전을 통해서 어떤 그 하고자 하는 것이 각각 그 장소에마다 다른 게 들어 있어서 그것을 볼 수 있는 그런 작업입니다.
The rest of these projects fall in the category of some type of magically mediated experience of reality. This by Zach Lieberman is based on a very simple practice, drawing with a brush and ink on paper. But using computer vision technology, he's able to create a type of performance where the analog marks become motion graphics that respond to his touch and sound.
컴퓨터 비전 기술을 통해서 이 잭 에버만이 점을 하나 페이퍼에 그렸는데요. 그게 이 모션을 반응해서 점이 움직이게 하는 그런 작업입니다.
Here, Philip Worthington, who was an RCA graduate student at the time he made this work, has created an interactive experience which is based on something we've all done before, shadow puppets. You stick your hand into the projector, you make a dog, here's a bunny rabbit, except his shadow puppets are augmented by motion graphics to become shadow monsters.
필립이라는 학생, RCA에 다니는 학생의 작품인데요. 섀도우 퍼핏이라고 우리들이 다 아는 그 그림자 꼭두각시 그 원리를 이용해서 만든 작업입니다.
This is a magician, a techno magician named Marco Tempest, and he combines the traditional tools of magic or illusion with simple technologies and also more complex ones. Here he's using his camera phone to create an experience that's both virtual and impossible reality.
이 사람은 테크노 마술사인데요. 아날로그 기계를 가지고 지금 위로 올라가고 있는데 불가능한 그런 현실을 보여주고 있습니다.
Here I am. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.
Because there's no video editing on these pieces, all live video. Can you believe an illusion?
비디오를 편집하지 않습니다.
So now Marco has actually started working in conjunction with Zach Lieberman, traditional augmented reality tools to create augmented reality magic.
When he's performing something
전형적인 어그멘티드 리얼리티 방식을 통해서 마술과 협업하는 과정인데요.
just like this, the card then gets marked or signed on the front of it, so we can recognize it when we see it again. The card then gets placed back into the deck, just like this, and I give the cards a quick shuffle. Okay, and a quick cut. Now for those of you who don't play cards, a deck of cards is made up of 4 different suits. Hearts, clubs, diamonds, and spades.
Watching magic is an active pursuit of what is false and what is true.
Performing magic is always about multiple dimensions, layers of reality combining.
Here I think Marco says an important thing, that the experience of magic and the experience of augmented reality is about layered experiences, overlapping layers of reality and virtual worlds.
여기서 중요한 얘기를 하고 있는 것 같은데요. 이 마술의 경험으로 이 레이어들을 오버래핑했을 때 어떤 또 다른 그 상황, 리얼리티가 나온다는 거죠.
So augmented reality markers are one way to achieve this, but there's numerous ways. And the purpose to augment reality, to augment experience, is much broader and richer than the technology itself. It is in fact a limitation.
어그멘티드 마크나 태그에 태그나 기술에 국한되지 않아야 되고 상상력을 통해서 더 큰 어그멘티드 리얼리티를 만들 수 있습니다.
It's worth watching the rest of that video. Another practice I'll briefly mention is the practice of projection mapping. It's quite popular now, so I believe probably everyone is familiar with this. But projecting onto physical spaces, whether they're sculptural or facades, and creating additional depth or motion or dynamic character into what's normally static. This was one of the first pieces I ever saw by Pablo Valbuena.
패브도 작품으로 프로젝션 매핑이라는 건데요. 요새 많이 유행하고 있는 걸로 실제 사물에 프로젝터를 투영시켜서 거기서 나타낼 수 있는 그림자, 빛과 그림자의 관계로 다른 형상을 나타내는 거죠.
So we're probably all quite familiar at this point with projects like this one. I believe was sponsored by Samsung, where impossible spaces and depth are created by projecting onto facades of buildings.
또 다른 프로젝션 매핑의 한 예로 삼성이 스폰서한 어떤 불가능해 보이는 현실을 프로젝터를 이용해서 만들어놓은 작업입니다.
I would suggest that this project, laser tag, which is a project of by myself and my collaborators, is also a type of augmented reality experience. The interface for the graffiti artist is the traditional interface of the graffiti artist, a marker. But that marker has been replaced with a laser beam. And the surface, which is normally a wall or a piece of paper, has now been replaced by the facade of a skyscraper or a bridge or a historical monument.
제 작업인 이 레이저 태그는 레이저를 이용해 건물 벽면에 세상에 전하고 싶은 메시지를 쓰는 것인데요. 이 레이저 포인터로 그래피티를 그리는 그냥 벽뿐만 아니라 고층 빌딩에서도 가능한 것입니다.
This project again combines all the traditional tools of computer vision, projector, camera, computer.
프로젝터, 컴퓨터, 웹카메라 이런 그 전형적인 AR에 필요한 도구를 써서 만들었습니다.
Now new technology is being created which enables new experiences. Here Jan Kenyon is using a Kinect, which is a camera and a depth finder built into one. And he's transformed his broom handle into a lightsaber.
얀 캐년의 새로운 방식인데요. 그 카메라와 뎁트 파인더이라는 것을 저 키넥트라는 이퀴프먼트를 이용해서 작업한 것입니다.
So the last three projects I want to talk about are a bit different because they combine a new emerging reality. I mean, this is our reality, right? Our experience of reality here in this room, three-dimensional, four-dimensional space. But we have another experience of reality, which is in our virtual world. So our experience of being an individual on Facebook, communicating with our loved one over Skype. These are all merging with our notion of what is real, expanding our concept of what is real.
나머지 세 가지는 제가 다른 이야기를 좀 할 건데요. 말하고 싶은 것은 리얼리티와 또 다른 리얼리티가 지금 계속 생성되고 있다는 것인데요. 스카이피를 이용해서 여자친구랑 얘기를 하고 이럴 때 그 현실과 또 다른 가상 세계에서 현실이 만들어진다는 것입니다.
So the first project in this vein manipulates the reality of the photograph, which is a type of real experience for us. The image fulgurator by Julius von Bismarck is actually a projector built into the body of a camera with a sensor that detects the flash of other people's cameras. So when someone takes a photograph of a famous historical monument, in this case, Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin, he detects the flash of their camera, and in that split second, projects an image onto the scene. So with their eyes, they don't see it. But when they look down at their digital camera, there's something there, an image or graphic or text that wasn't there in reality and isn't there anymore.
현실에서는 불가능하거나 아직 있지 않는 그런 형상을 프로젝터가 카메라 안에 들어가서 플래시를 디텍트해서 하는 기술로 나타낸 것입니다.
Here, visitors are looking confused at their camera.
자기가 찍은 영상이 나와 있는 게 아니라서 지금 컨퓨즈하고 있죠.
Here, someone's explaining. Yeah, it's funny that you mention it because I keep getting this image on my camera that's not actually there. So some other examples of his work here, when Obama visited Berlin to give a speech, he inserted a cross on the podium, quite subtle, to sort of say that there's a religious dimension of Europe's love of Obama.
오바마가 베를린에서 연설을 하고 있는 장면인데요. 저기 가상으로 십자가가 들어가 있죠. 저게 하나의 종교적인 표현으로 우리가 오바마를 좋아한다는 표현입니다.
Here they've branded the CEO of O2 with the O2 logo.
O2 CEO의 그 브랜드를 양복 위에다가 가상으로 새겨놨고요.
And here, quite provocatively, he's created an homage to Rene Magritte's The Man in a Bowler Hat by projecting a dove over top of the face of Mao, the portrait which hangs on the facade of the Forbidden City in Beijing.
베이징에 있는 그 마오쩌둥의 공공 그 사진에다가 그 르네 마그리트의 The Man in the Bowler Hat의 작품이 합성된 것처럼 보이는 작업입니다.
So the next project, also by Theo Watson, manipulates the world of our online communication with one another. We've all had the experience of typing to our friend, and our friend says something funny, and we write, or LOL, or wiggleskin, or smiley face. Sometimes we're not always smiling, but we know the gesture. He's written a computer vision software which detects a smile on his face and then inserts a smiley face into whatever online conversation media he's working in. So it puts a smile into the chat window, it puts a smile into his Nadon chat, or it puts a smile into an email. Here you can see an example of it detecting.
Theo Watson의 작업으로 우리가 채팅을 하고 SNS를 할 때 그냥 타이핑으로 스마일 이모티콘을 치죠. 근데 그 컴퓨터 비전 프로그램을 이용해서 사람의 스마일 움직임을 인지해서 디텍트하는 그런 것을 발명했습니다.
So, the last example is hard to explain. It's by an artist, two artists, South Korean woman named Mimi Sun and a UK artist named Elliot Woods. They operate under the name Kimchi and Chips. And this is a project in its early experimental phase, and they're calling it structured light. Basically, the idea is that you can create a type of holographic experience by using a projector and a camera. The projected light is scanned by the cameras to create a 3D scan of the room. And then you can use that same light to create these holographic images here, allowing a sphere to move through 3D space. Wired magazine wrote an article about this, and they said it's hard to describe because it's so new, there's not even a word for it yet. So they're using the term voxel, or structured light. And here's what it looks like physically.
한국 작가 미미선과 영국의 엘리엇 우드가 개발한 김치 앤 칩스라는 작업인데요. 이 홀로그래픽을 이용해서 프로젝터가 카메라를 스캔하고 또 홀로그래픽 이미지가 인지되고 반응되는 어떤 그 무브먼트와 2D에서는 픽셀이라고 부르는 것을 3D에서 박슬이라는 것이 있는데 그것들이 다 같이 연결돼서 만들어내는 작업입니다.
So finally, I just wanted to end on mentioning a project, the Sixth Sense, the type of technology being developed by Patty Mays and her research group out of the MIT Media Lab. And it combines a lot of the tools and technologies we talked about here. Augmented reality markers, projectors, cameras, mobile computing devices, and combines them into one cheap package. And their goal is to be able to project what they call metadata. And it's sort of the information we know about the world if we Google search the world. But they want to make it so that we don't have to pick up our phones and type into Google, but instead that this information is naturally available to us. And we can manipulate it with natural gestures, a la Minority Report and other films.
테드에 나온 테리 메 MIT 랩 교수의 작업으로 Sixth Sense라는 것인데요. Five Sense에다가 Sixth Sense로 어떤 그 메타데이터를 이용해서 가지고 다닐 수 있는 이 장비로 그 가상현실 작업을 한 것인데요. 제스처를 이용해서 이 사람의 이 손가락 제스처를 인지해서 구현할 수 있는 작업입니다.
So I mentioned this project only to say that what happens, what will artists be doing when technology like this begins to blur so that we have three dimensions of reality, the real world and the virtual world, which we have real experiences in, and now a third world, which is also real, but it's a world which is augmented by technology so that this meta world and the real world are physically present, maybe 24 hours a day. What will artists be doing then? What's augmented reality?
현실에서도 입체가 있고요. 그리고 가상현실이 있고 또 제3의 현실에 증강현실이 더해져서 이런 메타 월드가 지금 되고 있는데요. 그렇다면 아티스트들이 이제는 어떻게 이 메타 월드에서 작업을 해야 할까 그런 생각을 해봅니다.
Thank you all for your time. 감사합니다.